जय। श्री गुरवे नमः।
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 आचार्य मां विजानीयात् नावमन्येत कर्हिचित् नमर्त्य बुद्ध्या सूयेत सर्वदेव मयो गुरु। हे परम प्रियतम,
हे परम प्रियतम,
पूर्णतम पुरुषोत्तम श्री कृष्ण,
पूर्णतम पुरुषोत्तम श्री कृष्ण,
तुमसे विमुख होने के कारण,
तुमसे विमुख होने के कारण
अनादिकाल से हमने,
अनादिकाल से हमने
अनंतानंत दुख पाए,
अनंतानंत दुख पाए
एवं पा रहे हैं।
एवं पा रहे हैं।
पाप करते करते,
पाप करते करते
अंतःकरण
अंतःकरण
इतना मलिन हो चुका है
इतना मलिन हो चुका है
कि रसिकों द्वारा
कि रसिकों द्वारा
यह जानने पर भी,
यह जानने पर भी
कि तुम अपनी भुजाओं को पसारे,
कि तुम अपनी भुजाओं को पसारे,
अपनी वात्सल्यमयी दृष्टि से,
अपनी वात्सल्यमयी दृष्टि से
हमारी प्रतीक्षा कर रहे हो।
हमारी प्रतीक्षा कर रहे हो।
तुम्हारी शरण में नहीं आ पाता,
तुम्हारी शरण में नहीं आ पाता।
हे अशरण शरण,
हे अशरण शरण,
तुम्हारी कृपा के बिना,
तुम्हारी कृपा के बिना
तुम्हें कोई जान भी तो नहीं सकता।
तुम्हें कोई जान भी तो नहीं सकता।
ऐसी स्थिति में,
ऐसी स्थिति में
हे अकारण करुण,
हे अकारण करुण,
पतित पावन श्री कृष्ण,
पतित पावन श्री कृष्ण,
तुम अपनी अहेतुकी कृपा से ही,
तुम अपनी हेतु की कृपा से ही
हमको अपना लो।
हमको अपना लो।
हे करुणा सागर,
हे करुणा सागर,
हम भुक्ति मुक्ति आदि
हम भुक्ति मुक्ति आदि
कुछ नहीं मांगते।
कुछ नहीं मांगते।
हमें तो केवल तुम्हारे निष्काम प्रेम की ही,
तुम्हारी निष्काम प्रेम के ही
एकमात्र चाह है।
एकमात्र चाह है।
हे नाथ,
हे नाथ,
अपने विरद की ओर देखकर
अपनी विरध की ओर देखकर
इस अधम को निराश न करो।
इस अदम को निराश ना करो।
हे जीवन धन,
हे जीवन धन,
अब बहुत हो चुका,
अब बहुत हो चुका।
अब तो तुम्हारे प्रेम के बिना,
अब तो तुम्हारे प्रेम के बिना
यह जीवन मृत्यु से भी अधिक भयानक है।
मृत्यु से भी अधिक भयानक है।
अतएव प्रेम भिक्षाम देहि।
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 बोलिए साकेत बिहारी श्री राघवेंद्र सरकार की
जय।
वृंदावन बिहारी श्री यादवेंद्र सरकार की जय। श्रीमद सद्गुरु सरकार की जय। जय जय श्री राधे, जय जय श्री राधे, जय जय श्री राधे। राधे ठाकुरानी, राधे रस महारानी, राधे रसदानी, राधे ब्रजरानी,
ठाकुरानी, राधे
महारानी,
राधे रसदानी, राधे ब्रजरानी,
राधे ठाकुरानी, राधे ब्रज महारानी, राधे रसदानी, राधे ब्रज रानी,
राधे ठाकुरानी, राधे महारानी, राधे रसदानी, राधे ब्रजरानी,
वृंदावन जाकी रजधानी, जो प्रेम रूप रस की खानी,
वृंदावन जाकी रजधानी, जो प्रेम रूप रस की खानी,
वृंदावन जाकी रजधानी, जो प्रेम रूप रस की खानी,
वृंदावन जाकी रजधानी, जो प्रेम रूप रस की खानी,
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 राधे ठाकुरानी, राधे महारानी, राधे रसदानी, राधे ब्रज रानी,
राधे ठाकुरानी, राधे महारानी, राधे रसदानी, राधे ब्रज रानी,
जो ऐसी है अवढर दानी, ब्रज बनी तनी प्राण सखी मानी,
जो ऐसी है अवढर दानी, ब्रज बनी तनी प्राण सखी मानू।
जो ऐसी है अवढर दानी ब्रज बनी तनी प्राण सखी मानी।
जो ऐसी है अवढर दानी ब्रज बनी तनी प्राण सखी मानी।
ब्रज बनी तनी प्राण सखी मानी।
ब्रज बनी तनी प्राण सखी मानी।
जाको याचत सारंग पाणी करु कृपा कोर राधे रानी।
जाको याचत सारंग पाणी करु कृपा कोर राधे रानी।
करु कृपा कोर करु कृपा कोर राधे रानी।
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 जाको याचत सारंग पाणी करु कृपा कोर राधे रानी।
जाको याचत सारंग पाणी कर
कोर करु कृपा कोर राधे रानी
करु कृपा कोर राधे रानी
राधे ठाकुरानी राधे महारानी राधे रसदानी राधे ब्रज रानी
राधे ठाकुरानी राधे महारानी राधे रसदानी राधे ब्रज रानी
राधे ठाकुरानी राधे महारानी राधे रसदानी राधे ब्रज रानी
राधे ठाकुरानी राधे महारानी राधे रसदानी राधे ब्रज रानी
जाकी दासी कमला बानी चह चरण दूरी राधे रानी
जाकी दासी कमला वाणी चरण धूरी राधे रानी
जाकी दासी कमला बानी चह चरण धूरी चह चरण धूरी राधे रानी
जाकी दासी कमला वाणी चह चरण धूरी
चह चरण धूरी राधे रानी
चह चरण धूरी राधे रानी
सद्गुरु अनुकंपा अब जानी मम गति मति रति राधे रानी
सद्गुरु अनुकंपा अब जानी मम गति मति रति राधे रानी
सद्गुरु अनुकंपा अब जानी मम गति मति रति मम गति मति रति राधे रानी
सद्गुरु अनुकंपा अब जानी मम गति मति रति राधे रानी
मम गति मति रति राधे रानी
मम गति मति रति राधे रानी
राधे ठाकुरानी राधे महारानी राधे रसदानी राधे ब्रज रानी
राधे ठाकुरानी राधे महारानी राधे रसदानी राधे ब्रज रानी
राधे ठाकुरानी राधे महारानी राधे रसदानी राधे ब्रज रानी
राधे ठाकुरानी, राधे महारानी, राधे रसदानी, राधे ब्रज रानी।
अलबेली सरकार की जय।
श्रीमद् सद्गुरु सरकार की, श्रीमद् युगल सरकार की। गुरु आराधना दिश्च गुरु परमदैवतम् गुरु परतरं नास्ति कृपालु गुरवे नमः। ध्यानमूलं गुरोर्मूर्तिः पूजामूलं गुरोर्पदम् मन्त्रमूलं गुरोर्वाक्यम् भक्तिमूलं गुरोर्कृपा। कस्तूरी तिलकं ललाटपटले वक्षःस्थले कौस्तुभम् नासाग्रे वरमौक्तिकम् करतले वेणुः करे कङ्कणम् सर्वाङ्गे हरिचन्दनं सुललितं कण्ठे च मुक्तावली गोपस्त्री परिवेष्टितो विजयते गोवर्धन गोपाल चूडामणिः यो ब्रह्माणं विदधाति पूर्वं यो वै वेदांश्च प्रहिणोति तस्मै तग्वंह देवमात्मबुद्धिप्रकाशम् मुमुक्षुर्वै शरणमहं प्रपद्ये। Let's chant for a few minutes. Bhaju Giridhar Govind Gopala 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 श्रीमद् सद्गुरु सरकार की Dear devotees of Sri Maharaji, dear viewers, Radhe Radhe. Shedding light on the subject of desires. In my talk last Sunday, I had explained that the root cause of all Mayic afflictions, all Mayic defilements is desire. Desires are of 5 kinds pertaining to our 5 physical sense organs of sight, smell, sound, taste, and touch. We desire to visualize, perceive things around us in the world. We desire to hear things, hear sweet sounds, words, music. We desire to touch. We desire to taste. We desire to inhale sweet, alluring fragrances, smell. This whole world around us is the subject of our 5 sense organs. And these desires that we as individuals entertain have caused us to revolve endlessly in this world through the cycle of life and death over the course of infinite lifetimes. So our scriptures, they tell us that if we wish, if we so desire to transcend this eternal cycle of misery, sorrows, sufferings, and torment of our 5 sense organs, that we should renounce desires. If we renounce desires, then we can have complete peace of mind. What could this imply? What are the scriptures telling us? They're implying that despite the fact that we have, over the course of unlimited lifetimes, we have made incessant, persistent efforts, we have made attempts to acquire, to receive fulfillment, permanent fulfillment, but to this day, to this very moment, we have not succeeded in securing lasting joy, happiness, pleasure. The science behind this is, the scriptures tell us in the Shvetashvatara Upanishad, Gyagyo dva vaja vishanisha vaja yeka bhoktri bhogyartha yukta anantaschatma vishwarupo hyakarta trayam yada vindate brahmametat. So the Upanishads tell us that there are 3 eternally existing entities: Brahma, the individual soul, and Maya. So we, the individual soul, in any given lifetime, we have 2 choices to make. We can choose the world or we can choose God. Now, it's obvious, not just because our scriptures are saying so, but it is our own personal experience. We undeniably have suffered life after life. Why? Because we have gravitated toward the world. That is what we have done. So the scriptures tell us that if the path that we chose, Premarg, means the world, has not given us fulfillment, then it's only obvious that we must choose the right path. That's it. And that path is the path of God, the path of enlightenment, the path of perfect love, perfect happiness, and the path is called Shreya Marg. That is the path that we need to tread. This is what our scriptures are telling us. So, for such an individual who understands this knowledge, this philosophy, and aspires to, or is willing, or is inclined toward the right path, the scriptures forewarn such a traveler on the path of God. And what is that warning that the scriptures give? Renounce all desires, material desires. It is the first and foremost condition on the path of divine love realization. As Rup Goswami Ji in the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu has revealed, Anya bhilashita shunyam. Anya means other. Other referring to, besides God, everything else is fit to be abandoned. In other words, material things, material objects and people. And the science behind this is that devotion, bhakti, is practiced with the mind alone. The mind alone is the cause of bondage and liberation from the world. And if we choose material pleasures or even celestial pleasures, if we entertain these desires, then with what mind are we going to practice devotion? Because we only have one mind, we can either fill that mind with material desires or the desire for spiritual things, for God. And even if we want to keep both in our heart, in our mind, it is impossible. Both cannot reside in the same mind, one or the other. So, material desires are extremely dangerous. And so the first and foremost condition is a prerequisite that we should firmly resolve in our mind that we have consistently and constantly chased life after life is not what we need. No. And yet, the reality is what? That is what we have done. We have wasted our unlimited, uncountable lifetimes begging gods and goddesses, even saints, for worldly objects. Once there lived an old man at the foot of Vindhya hills in Damodar Garh in MP, in Madhya Pradesh. So he was an old man and he possessed nothing but a hut, a thatched hut. is all he had. And this man was very lazy, and so he had to suffer much in life. But he had heard that sadhus possessed siddhis or yogic powers, which they could, and with those powers, they could create many things of their desire, or according to their wishes, rather. So one day, as this old man was thinking to plan a life without doing any work whatsoever, this thought came to his mind forcibly. And he thought that if he could go to the caves of Vindhya hills, then he will surely meet a sadhu. So with this intention, he started out for the caves. And after walking a considerable distance, he met a sadhu. And that sadhu, he entertained this old man very nicely and inquired about his purpose for coming to him. So the old man said, "Oh, beloved Guruji, I am very old, and I possess nothing but a thatched hut is all I possess. And I'm very old, and in this age, I am unable to work to earn a living. So kindly give me some wealth." So the sadhu, he kept silent. He kept silent. And this old man, he kept pressing the sadhu again and again with his request. At last, the sadhu gave him a seat, saying that whenever he wanted anything, that he could sit on that seat after washing his hands and feet and face. And the thought, and whatever he desired, and the first thought that entered his mind would materialize. So his desired object would appear before him. So the old man, he thanked the sadhu heartily, and he proceeded swiftly to his house. Now, he didn't want to waste any time, so what did he do? He sat on it after washing his face, and as he was very hungry, he thought of food first. And immediately, a most sumptuous meal with varieties of different delicacies appeared before him. He ate to his heart's content. Now he wanted to have a rest. So he thought of a bed, and he got a bed with a spring mattress. He got a spring bed and silken pillows. So he rested. But his mind was ever restless. Ever restless. So he rose from the bed and he sat on the seat again. And now he wanted his hut to be changed into a beautiful big palace. So within the twinkling of an eye, his hut, turned into a beautiful palace. On beholding the palace, he rejoiced very much. And yet, he thought that a big palace is of no use if it's not filled with a large amount of wealth. And just then, bags of silver and gold and diamonds were placed at his feet. Now, the joy of this old man knew no bounds. The next thing he thought of was servants to attend on him, and so they appeared with folded hands at his service. This man, the old man, was ecstatic. And then a thought occurred to him that if an earthquake were to come, what would be his position? And suddenly, an earthquake came and demolished the entire palace to the grounds. And the servants and the old man were perished in the ruins. So, such are the disastrous consequences of material desires. Material desires. And even begging from gods and goddesses. We have visited the temple of Tirupati ji and Hanuman ji and Durga ji, asking for various things. How ironic is that? How ironic. It's like we heard in Sri Maharaj's lecture last night that it's like going into a sweet shop and asking for a pair of shoes. God is the embodiment of perfect happiness, and yet we ask for worldly objects. We ask for objects of sorrow and suffering. That is what we ask for. Have we not had enough over the past so many lifetimes that we should expect more? Have we not had enough? We have endured uncountable lifetimes, and enjoyed the pleasures of even the celestial abodes all the way up to Brahma's abode. And still our mindset is like that of a beggar, So this is why the scriptures, they explicitly tell us that the foremost condition for devotion, for bhakti, is abandonment or renunciation of worldly material desires. So desires are a great barrier, a great obstacle on the path. And so all the longing for material objects and building castles in the air have to be renounced. Now, coming back to the question I left you all with last week, how to conquer material desires. How to conquer material desires. We have heard through Sri Maharaj's lectures, the Vedas tell us, Girir Mahan, Girir Abdhir Mahan, Abdhir Nabho Mahat, Nabsopi Param Brahma Tatopyasha Duratyaya. Chandogya Upanishad. Mountains are big. We have seen mountains even bigger as the ocean. Bigger than the ocean is the sky. Even bigger and the greatest is God. Yasmat param na paramasti kinchit. God is the greatest. And yet this Ved mantra tells us that the desires are even greater than God. The Bhagavatam tells us, Yat prithivyam vrihi yavam hiranyam pashavah striyah nalame kasya paryaptam tasmat trishnam parityajit. That if there was such an individual who was the emperor of the entire earth, he had everything at his disposal. He was virtuous, wealthy, he had fame, he had everything. Even so, his desires would keep on multiplying. So what I'm trying to say is that on the one hand, the scriptures, they tell us that so long as we are under the influence of Maya, it is impossible to overcome desires. This is what the scriptures tell us. However, on the contrary, they talk about renouncing desires, as we just heard. Shri Krishna tells us in the Gita, Vihaya kaman yah sarvan pumans charati nispriha nirmamo nirahankarah sashanti madhigacchati. People talk about having tension, depression, anxiety. They feel restless. So how to overcome these shortcomings? What to do? What is the solution? So Sri Krishna in the Gita says, well, desire is the root cause, so give up desires. Now you may wonder how these contradictory statements, how can both these statements be true? And yet, my Gurudev Jagadguru Shree Kripaluji Maharaj has reconciled these contradictory statements very simply and scientifically. Let us reflect. First of all, why do we form desires and what do we desire? Secondly, what is the nature of desires? So why do we form desires and what do we desire? We desire material people and material objects. Mother, father, family, friends, a prestigious car, a great job, all of this. Why? The reason is one. For anand, for happiness, for pleasure. Because it is inherent within us to desire happiness. It is an inborn quality that we possess. We desire happiness. That's it. But why do we desire all of these things? The answer remains the same. Because we wish to be happy. We want happiness, satisfaction of our true inner self. Along these lines, the highest and the greatest experience of happiness in this material world we experience when we are in deep sleep. When we're in deep sleep. So when we are in deep sleep, what happens? We do not have any desires whatsoever. And when we wake up, what do we say? Oh, today I had a very comfortable, restful sleep. Let us analyze this. Who feels happy? Exactly, who feels happy or sad? It is the mind that experiences happiness or sadness. It is the mind. In reality, there is no happiness in sleep at all. It is merely the absence of problems which expresses itself as happiness. As happiness. In our awakened state, in our conscious state, we are always being bothered with the seemingly endless problems and desires. So the so-called happiness that we experience in sleep or in deep sleep is completely absent when we are in conscious state. It is completely absent. We may embrace our loved ones, our family or friends or whoever. Even people embrace their pets. We may have had great, delicious foods, different kinds of delicacies to entertain our palate. We may have visited all different places, scenic places. But none of these, or the experience of happiness or pleasure that we derive from any of these experiences, does not compare with the experience of happiness in deep sleep. God has given us this boon of sleep for free. Even a billionaire with all his wealth cannot experience the same amount of peace that a common man experiences freely, totally relaxed in his sleep. The billionaire may be living in a $1 billion mansion. He may lie on a $1 million bed, but he still does not experience that level of peace and happiness in his awakened state. No. In his awakened state, rather, he is constantly bothered by the barrage of material desires. In comparison, a beggar who does not have a home and he sleeps on the sidewalk snores his way to happiness. So in our life, we have experienced a great deal of material happiness through people, through objects, listened to great music, had great food, etc. However, at night, when we lay down in our bed, and the transition begins from our awakened state into the state of deep sleep, in those few moments, we experience the greatest maximum amount of happiness or joy or bliss, material bliss, that we do not experience through our association with anyone in our life, may it be our father, mother, or anyone that we love dearly. No. You may wonder how I make such a claim. Well, because while entering into deep sleep, what happens? We lose our consciousness. We lose our consciousness. But while being engrossed in material, worldly interactions with people around us, we never experience that amount of happiness where we actually lose our consciousness. No, we don't. So, when we drop off to sleep, and the transition from being awake begins into that state of deep sleep, that can be compared, or that level of happiness that we experience can be compared with the initial stage of samadhi, trance. And when we penetrate that trance even further, then we experience a heightened amount of happiness or bliss. But divine happiness is infinite times greater. And that is why the scriptures say, Yo vai bhuma tat sukham. That happiness is unlimited, it is everlasting, it is immeasurable, it is ever increasing. So, why do we form desires, and what do we desire? We desire happiness, but not only that. We desire happiness that is infinite, that is synonymous with God. That is what we desire. So the root of all desires is what? The desire for infinite happiness. That is our inborn, natural desire. We all have an affinity for that magnitude of happiness. That is what we desire. And that is why we form desires, for happiness. Now the second question, what is the nature of desires? What is it? So Sri Krishna tells us in the Gita, Dhyayato vishayan punsah sangasteshu pajayate sangat sanjayate kamah kamat krodho bhijayate. So Sri Krishna tells us that if a desire arises, then what happens? The desire is, if it's fulfilled, then greed arises, greed. And that fulfillment multiplies ambition. We become ambitious. I have $100,000. Now I'm going to chase $200,000. Now I have $500,000. Now I want to become a millionaire. So what happens? We become increasingly ambitious. That is what greed. So fulfillment leads to greed. And when our desire is not fulfilled, then what happens? We feel angry, restless. We feel tension. And that is what happens. My mother doesn't listen to me. My wife doesn't listen to me. My son gives me trouble. We feel troubled by all of these people in our life. This is what happens. So as soon as a desire is born, what have we done? We have extended an invitation to misery, unhappiness. That is what we have done. There's no escape. And it is impossible to eliminate desires while in conscious state. We cannot. And even if we were to try how? Well, my mother is an impediment in my spiritual life. She is an impediment in my spiritual life, and I am going to forget my mother. I'm going to forget my mother. I'm going to forget my mother. I'm not even going to think about her. What's going on? What's happening? Well, the thought of your mother is coming into your mind again and again. It's recurring, coming back. Even as you're attempting to forget your mother, but it's working against you. You're thinking about her even more. So it is impossible to eradicate desires. No. Then what is the solution? What is the solution? So Sri Maharaji tells us, Kamana kabhu mitena Govind Radhe Hari Guru Seva ki Kamana bana de. So the solution lies in replacing material desires with desires for God and Guru. Replacing. In other words, we divert them. We divert our material desires to godly desires, to spiritual desires. That is what we do. We direct them toward the path of devotion, bhakti. That is what we do. This is what our scriptures tell us. Lord Kapil, he taught the path of devotion to his mother. And he said, Prasangamajaram pashamatmanah kavayo viduh sa esh sadhu shukrito moksha dvaramapavritam. So Lord Kapil said that the wise people say that intense attachment to worldly objects is the cause of bondage for the soul. And yet, if that same attachment is directed to God and Guru, it opens the gates of liberation for that soul. That is what happens. We all know how to love. We have not been taught how to love. Again, it is inherent within every one of us to love. We love everything in our life and the people we love without being taught. But if those passions of love and longing and infatuation can be diverted to God and Guru, then we will surely meet or reach our goal of perfection. It is our own experience. We know as individuals that when we constantly begin to ponder, we begin to obsess about something or some object or some person, then what happens? Then that obsession, it translates or transforms into deep yearning attachment. We become attached. And then we do anything it takes to attain the object of our desire. To attain, that is what happens. Suppose you're driving a car, but being unsure of the direction of your destination, you have gone astray. So what do? What do you do instead of driving eastward, you realize you're driving westward? Well, obviously, you ask for the correct directions and you make a U-turn to get on the right track. In exactly the same way, likewise, in the journey of life, if you have not experienced true happiness, inner happiness, peace, contentment, or whatever name you give, then ask God-realized personalities who have achieved this and make a U-turn to be on the right path. That is what you need to do. Right now, at present, our mind is all entangled in the world. Why? Because we have the strong belief that this world is in fact a source of joy and pleasure and happiness. We believe that money and wealth and family will bring us happiness. Nevertheless, when we come across people who are brimming with these riches, such people are either horribly unhappy or relentlessly striving for more. That is what they're doing. That is what they're doing. So if somehow we could discover true happiness, which is unlimited and infinite, then our endless pursuit for happiness in this material world will cease. It will cease. And moreover, repeated thinking about these objects, it only reinforces our conviction and deepens our attachment. So if we can discover, then our pursuit for happiness would cease. God realized saints proclaim that devotion, known as bhakti, is the answer to infinite and unlimited happiness. Bhakti revainam nayati Vedas. Upasate purusham ye hyakamah Ved. Yasya deve para bhaktir yatha deve tatha gurau Ved. Ananya shintayanto mam ye janah paryupasate tesham nityabhiyuktanam yogakshemam vahamyaham. Gita. Bhaktyahame shraddhayatma priyah satam bhakti punati mannishtha shvapaka napi sambhavat. Bhagavatam. Jap tap niyam yoga nij dharma shruti sambhav nana shubha karma ज्ञान दया दम तीरथ मज्जन जहाँ लगी कर्म कहे श्रुति सज्जन आगम निगम पुराण अनेका पढ़े सुने कर फल प्रभु एका तव पद पंकज प्रीति निरंतर सब साधन कर यह फल सुंदर मिलहीन रघुपति बिनु अनुरागा किए जोग जप ज्ञान विरागा रघुपति भक्ति सजीवन मुरी अनुपान श्रद्धा अतिरूरी बारी मथे बरु होय घृत सिकता ते बरु तेल बिनु हरि भजन न भव तरिय यह सिद्धांत अपेल. Ramayana. So all of these scriptures, they proclaim, and so do the saints, that devotion is the answer. And devotion, in essence, means to fix our mind on God. Fix our mind on God. And engaging the mind in God is exactly what the saints or God-realized personalities did. Similar to them, we too possess 5 senses and intellect, a mind. The saints or God-realized personalities, they don't possess an extra sense or intellect. And so before God realization, they also were engrossed in worldly enjoyments and overpowered by Maya, just like we are. Realizing the fact that this world is not a source of that everlasting happiness, they diverted all of their attachments to God and thereby triggering their mind to be absorbed in God. That is what they did. And this is beautifully elucidated in the Bhagavatam. Vedavyas ji tells us, Vishayan dhyayataschittam vishayeshu vishajyate mamanusmarataschittam mayeva praviliyate. Bhagavatam. The mind of an individual that dwells on material sense objects becomes devoted to those objects, becomes a slave to those objects. While the mind that contemplates on God becomes devoted, that mind becomes attached and devoted to God. Shri Krishna explicates to his dearest friend Uddhav, and Shri Krishna says or asked him, do you know how people in the world become caught up in worldly objects and pleasures of the world? How? Because they repeatedly contemplate, they think again and again of something or someone as being a source of happiness. It's just like when we were born, we did not have all of our habits that we have at present. We developed all these habits through repetitive thinking, contemplation. That is what we did. So Sri Maharaji gives an example of a smoker. A smoker, first when he or she starts smoking, they start smoking because they believe that smoking is a source of happiness. Thinking it's a very stylish thing to do. A man wears a suit and a tie, and with a cigarette hanging from his mouth, he smokes, he tries, he forces himself. Initially, he coughs and splutters, but he continues to smoke anyway, thinking just to try to win the attention of people around and trying to portray himself as being extraordinarily great. What happens? A few weeks later, a few months later, those cigarettes grab that person's mind. They have a complete hold over that person. And before he knows it, he becomes addicted. And even if he tries to let go, he is unable to. He feels helpless against that habit that he developed, that addiction that he developed through repeated thinking. Same thing with alcohol consumption. Likewise, with any other habit that we have today. How? It was through repeated thinking. So Sri Krishna says that through repeated thinking that we become attached. And that attachment leads to an intense desire for that object. So this is what we have done in the world. And now we have to reverse that. In other words, we have to divert it and direct it. Shri Krishna says, now contemplate happiness on me and my devotee saints, because they are my own form. They are my own grace, my own form. Yes, they're non-different from me. So firmly engross your mind in them with explicit faith. Immediately your mind will be occupied in that person or in that personality or that object whom your intellect approves as being a source of happiness. Because after all, our mind has been thirsty for unlimited lifetimes, for lasting happiness. So it's only a matter of realization by the mind and the intellect, and having an unwavering resolve. That is what we need. The practice is the same. The effort is the same. And once we start this journey, it will become natural. It will become natural. So the remedy to the problem of chasing after material desires lies in maneuvering those desires toward God. Toward God. That is the remedy. Not eliminating them. We cannot eliminate them. Why? Because we desire happiness. And until and unless we receive that happiness that we have eternally sought as the soul, divine, perfect happiness, we cannot eliminate desires. No. So, the scriptures tell us that while we cannot eliminate them, we can divert them. Divert them. And that is maneuver them toward God and Guru. So how can we conquer material desires? The answer is that we divert them or change the field of our attachment from the material to the divine. That is what we have to do. Now, as regards, you might wonder then, how do we maneuver those desires? Well, through practice. Through practice. And in explaining this process of maneuvering these desires, or material desires, toward God, Sri Maharaji has laid out three essential steps in the process. Tasmad Bharata Sarvatma Bhagavan Ishvaro Hari Shrotavyah Kirtitavyascha Smaratavyascha Bhayam. Three essential steps. Knowledge. Shravan means we listen to knowledge. We have been given an intellect, yes, faculty of discrimination. So we utilize that power of discrimination to absorb, to comprehend knowledge. And on the basis of this knowledge, would we become inclined to practically apply this knowledge? Practical application of the knowledge. You see, this knowledge is something that we have to listen to and understand and comprehend. So our desire or our inclination to do devotion and bhakti hinges on our own personal understanding of divine knowledge. Not because the scriptures are saying so, or not because saints are telling us. We ourselves have to understand its importance. Because unless we realize its importance, it doesn't matter how many lectures we listen to. It doesn't matter. It's not going to amount to anything. We ourselves have to understand its value and its importance. And on that basis, we utilize or we use our discrimination to understand and apply it practically. So what are those two steps of practical application of the knowledge? Well, kirtan, remembering, lovingly chanting the divine names and the glories and the virtues and the attributes of God, while absorbing our mind in their loving remembrance of their form. So this is the practice. This is the practice. So gradually, with this practice, gradually our material desires will begin to recede, and our desire for God and Guru will begin to escalate, will begin to grow. So it's a gradual process. It's not something that's going to happen overnight. No, it's a gradual process, and that is why practice is essential. And how to practice? What are some of the secrets to practicing, and some of the knowledge within? To how should we practice? I don't have time to go into detail today. However, all of you viewers and all of you sitting here in the audience, we all know that we have the opportunity to participate and to engage in the live stream of our evening satsangs here at RMD every evening between the hours of 7:30 till 9. And please, I urge you to avail yourselves of the divine discourses of my Gurudev, Jagadguru Shree Kripaluji Maharaj, because knowledge, the more we listen to it, the more it becomes reinforced. And that association, because it carries that power to inspire us, surely we would be inspired with those divine discourses, and our desire for spirituality, our desire for devotion and bhakti will definitely spark. So, to answer the question how to conquer material desires, Sri Maharaji has reconciled the contradictions by telling us that we cannot rather eliminate, but we can change. We can direct them toward God and Guru, so that one day we can, through this practice of bhakti and devotion, reach our goal of divine love realization. With these words, I will conclude my pravachan. Boliye Shrimat Sadguru Sarkar ki, Shrimat Yugal Sarkar ki, Jai Jai Shri Radhe, Jai Jai Shri Radhe, Jai Jai Shri Radhe. So we'll just do a few minutes of kirtan before we conclude the satsang with Aarti. Radhe, 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 Jai 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 Shri Radhe. Radhe, Radhe, Jai 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 Shri Radhe. Radhe, राधे राधे जय 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 श्री राधे
राधे राधे जय 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 श्री राधे
राधे राधे राधे जय 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 श्री राधे
राधे राधे राधे जय 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 श्री राधे
राधे राधे राधे बरसाने वाली राधे
राधे राधे राधे बरसाने वाली राधे
राधे राधे राधे जय 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 श्री राधे
राधे राधे राधे बरसाने जय श्री राधे
राधे राधे राधे जय 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 श्री राधे
राधे राधे राधे बरसाने वाली राधे
राधे राधे राधे बरसाने वाली राधे
राधे राधे राधे जय 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 श्री 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 राधे
राधे राधे राधे बरसाने वाली 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 राधे
राधे राधे बरसाने वाली राधे
राधे राधे राधे बरसाने वाली राधे
राधे राधे बरसाने वाली राधे
बोलिए बरसाने वाली राधा रानी की।
जयति जगद गुरु गुरुवर की, गाओ मिली आरती रसिक वर की। गाओ गाओ मिली आरती रसिक वर की। गुरु पद नख मणि चंद्रिका प्रकाश, जाके उर बसे ताके मोह तम नाश। जाके माथ नाथ तब हाथ करवास, ताते हुए माया मोह सब ही निराश। पावे गति मति रति राधा वर की, गाओ मिली आरती रसिक वर की। गाओ गाओ मिली आरती रसिक वर की। अरे मन मूढ़ छाणु नारी नर हाथ, गुरु बिनु ब्रह्म शामु न देंगे साथ। कोमल कृपालु बड़े कृपा सिंधु नाथ, पाके इन्हें आज तू अनाथ हो सनाथ। इन्हीं के अधीन कृपा गिरिधर की, गाओ मिली आरती रसिक वर की। गाओ गाओ मिली आरती रसिक वर की। भक्ति योग रस अवतार अभिराम, करे निगमागम समन्वय ललाम। श्यामा श्याम नाम रूप लीला गुण धाम, बाँट रहे प्रेम निष्काम बिनु दाम। हो रही सफल काया नर नर की, गाओ मिली आरती रसिक वर की। गाओ गाओ मिली आरती रसिक वर की। लली लाल लीला का सलोना सुविलास, छाया दिव्य दृष्टि विच प्रेम का प्रकाश। वैसा ही विनोद वही मंजू मृदुहास, करे बस बर बस उच्च अट्टहास। झूमी चले चाल वही नटवर की, गाओ मिली आरती रसिक वर की। गाओ गाओ मिली आरती रसिक वर की। जयति जगद गुरु गुरुवर की, गाओ मिली आरती रसिक वर की। गाओ गाओ मिली आरती रसिक वर की। आरती प्रीतम प्यारी की, के बनवारी नथवारी की। आरती प्रीतम प्यारी की, के बनवारी नथवारी की। दुहन सिर कनक मुकुट झलके, दुहन श्रुति कुंडल भल हलके। दुहन दृग प्रेम सुधा छलके, चसीले बैन रसीले नैन दसीले सैन। दुहन मैनन मन हारी की, बनवारी नथवारी। आरती प्रीतम प्यारी के बनवारी नथवारी। दूनी दृग चितवनी परवारी, दूनी लट लट कनी छवि न्यारी, दूनी भौमट कनी अति प्यारी। रसन मुख पान हसन मुस्कान, दशन दमकान दूनी बेसर छवि न्यारी के बनवारी नथवारी। आरती प्रीतम प्यारी के बनवारी नथवारी। एक उर पीतांबर फहरे, एक उर नीलांबर लहरे, दून उर लर मोतिन छहरे। कंकनन खनक किंकिनिन झनक, नूपुरुन भनक दुन रुन झुन धुनि प्यारी के बनवारी नथवारी। आरती प्रीतम प्यारी के बनवारी नथवारी। एक सिर मोर मुकुट राजे, एक सिर चूनरी छवि छाजे, दून सिर तिरछे भल भ्राजे। संग ब्रज बाल लाडली लाल, बाहंगल डाल कृपालु दून दृग चारी के बनवारी नथवारी। आरती प्रीतम प्यारी के बनवारी नथवारी। आरती प्रीतम प्यारी के बनवारी नथवारी। मत प्रिया राधिका प्रिया, मधवो राधिका धा। तस्मादपि गरीयान्यो कृपालुर्मे जगद्गुरु। गुरुं भजति श्रीकृष्णः, श्रीकृष्णं भजते गुरु। सिद्धान्ततस्य भेदेऽपि कृपालुर्मे गुरुर्महान्। अशरण शरण महाप्रभु, तुम स्वामी हम दास। कीजे कृपा कृपालु मम, दीजे गुरु सहवास। तुम दीनन रखवार, हम अहंकार अवतार। अस करु कृपा कृपालु अब, दीन बनु सरकार। हों ऐसो हों पतित जो पतित ना आपुहि मान। ऐसे पतित विचित्र को पावन करूं तब जान। सबे भिखारी जगत के जेतिक नातेदार। दिव्य प्रेम आनंद के तुम एक साहूकार। श्रीमद् सद्गुरु सरकार की, श्रीमद् युगल सरकार की, श्री रासेश्वरी राधा रानी की, श्री भक्ति धाम की, जगद्गुरुत्तम श्री कृपालु महाप्रभु की, श्री राधा माधव धाम की जय जय श्री राधे, जय जय श्री